There we are. All right. So yes, as I was saying, my name is Melissa Morley-Weaver, and I will be your host today. I'm the alumni coordinator at the Global Office. And our webinar today will be addressing sustainability and business. Our speaker today is Pierandrea Quarta. He's a CEMS alumnus from 2010 from ESADE and Louvain School of Management. So thanks again, Pierandrea, for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
All right.
Looking forward.
Great. We just have a quick intro just about the efforts that are behind the CEMS webinar series. We have two entities behind these efforts. One is the CAA, which is a nonprofit founded in 1993. It's the official body engaging and representing the largest stakeholder group of the CEMS Global Alliance, which is over 15,600 alumni now. And we're growing at a high pace of 1,300 students every year with the MIM. So make sure you stay connected with us and the alumni at the CEMS alumni platform at www.cemsalumni.net. The other strong force behind the CEMS webinar series is the Student Board. Their mission is to gather students' opinions about the CEMS Alliance, as well as the CEMS MIM, and to bring recommendations to improve the CEMS MIM and CEMS community life in general. They also include projects and aim to foster and develop social awareness and ethical conscience. So please try to reach out to them if you have a chance. They really, really do a lot for us. Some current projects that are coming up are the CEMS podcast, CEMS webinar series, and the CEMS virtual coffee and chats, as you know, that are coming up. There's one the 24th as well as on the 25th. So check those out on the CEMS alumni platform, as well as the CEMS Alumni of the Year Awards and the Student Alumni Journey. So check that out. If you could move to the next slide, that'd be great. Just some housekeeping for today. So our webinar will run about an hour. So make sure that you know that you are muted when you arrive. If you'd like to ask a question, there's a Q&A box located at the bottom of the screen. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. If you need help during the webinar, there is some resources there for you. There's a help guide. And if you really are stuck, just send a message to alumni@cems.org and we'll follow up with you. Some follow-up afterwards is that we have the recording for you about 72 hours after the webinar. And we would appreciate any of your comments back out at our survey there. And stay tuned for future events at the platform as well. So I would like to introduce our speaker today, which is Pierandrea. He is a CEMS alumnus from 2010 from ESADE and Louvain School of Management. Pierandrea is the founder and CEO of Rebo, a company on a quest to help solve the problem of plastic waste through an innovative smart bottle. Prior to that, he spent more than 10 years in FMCG, mainly at P&G, where he was head and shoulders brand manager and ideated and launched the first CPG product made of ocean plastic, winner of the UN Momentum for Change Award in 2017. Pierandrea is Italian and today lives in Geneva. Without further ado, the floor is yours, Pierandrea.
All right, well, thank you so much for the introduction. I hope you can hear me all right. If there is any problem with the audio, please let me know. And so, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. You know, CEMS is very close to my heart, as I suppose is very close to the heart of everybody that's on this call. So it's a great honor and pleasure to be able to, you know, share some of my early wisdom, if we can call it this way, or at least early learnings in the world of sustainability. So the world of sustainability is something that I care very much about. And it's somewhere where I ended up by accident, if you want, in the sense that I remember when I was studying at ESADE, like you mentioned before, we had a course on CSR, and CSR back then wasn't really a thing. It was 2007, 2008. It wasn't really that much of a thing. So it was more of a compliance rather than a competitive advantage. And it was starting, by the way, to become a compliance. And I remember actually, interestingly enough, my CEMS graduation, it was a keynote speech from this guy. And so Melissa, I think we're gonna, by the way, guys, we're gonna try to do some polls as we go on, just to get a bit of engagement, given this on a web conference. So Melissa, could we put out the first one just to ask who is this person? Okay, there you go. Well, okay, thank you guys. A lot of you actually understood who the guy is, Muhammad Yunus. The other ones were very good guesses as well, hopefully. So the ones that got it wrong, don't worry. Muhammad Yunus was invited as a keynote speaker for my graduation, which was on that year in Rotterdam at the RSM. And I remember he was talking about the concept of social business. You know, coming out of business school, you hear somebody talking to you about social business and you're like, wow, does that make sense? Is that what I really want to do? Is that what we've been educated on doing, which is, you know, look after profit. We need to go after profit. And you know, with the years, I've come to realize how social business was a revolutionary concept, which has kind of shaped the way people are thinking about businesses with impact today. So social business, the way Yunus defines it, is a business which does care about profit, but uses profit as a mean of generating further impact. And therefore, in most cases, there is no dividend generation and there is reinvestment of that profit into the business, which is aiming at working as a business first of all, but also having an impact. And so that has been guiding a little bit of what I've been doing. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a story of what I've been through, the kind of projects that I've been working on, and hopefully they're going to give you a sense of what I believe is sustainability in business. And then I'm going to come to a few notions and conclusions based on that. So first, let's start with what is sustainability. So this is the definition which is given from the Oxford Dictionary, which is the avoidance of the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. So if you ask me, I don't like this definition for a very simple reason. It's based on avoidance. You know, avoidance is about trying not to do something. And I believe that sustainability is becoming more and more about a more proactive, a more positive approach, about trying to go an extra mile, about trying to go an extra step. So you hear a lot of companies, or you used to hear a lot of companies talking about being neutral, by neutralizing their impact and you know, limiting the depletion of natural resources. I think, and hopefully, we're progressively shifting into companies trying to have a positive impact. And so not about being neutral, but actually driving good impact in the world. I'm going to tell you the story of the brand that I've used to work on. And while I talk, perhaps Melissa, we can put out the first, the second poll. So Head & Shoulders is a very, very big brand, is one of the main brands from Procter & Gamble. And, you know, to talk about it, I wanted to ask you, how many bottles do you think that Head & Shoulders makes every year? So here there is 3 options. You know, Head & Shoulders is one of the big brands that Procter & Gamble runs. And you know, I had the luck and pleasure of being the global brand manager for this. So what I was doing was trying to develop projects of different kinds, future innovation for the brand, running digital marketing. But then at some point, I was made head of sustainability from my back then vice president. And I remember going to her and saying, what does that actually mean? And she said, well, actually, whatever you want it to mean, in a sense that the business was not at a stage where the sustainability strategy was defined or anything like that. And therefore, I had the full flexibility on trying to define what was sustainability for Head & Shoulders. So maybe we can just quickly close the poll and understand, what do you guys think? So that is actually the wrong answer. the most common one, the 500 million, is the wrong one. Actually, Head & Shoulders makes 1 billion bottles every year. And it's mind-blowing. I was mind-blown when I was working on that. Head & Shoulders is the #1 shampoo brand in the world. Imagine that 14% of all the shampoo bottles made and sold in the world come from Head & Shoulders. So that's more or less a share that the brand has. And so, you know, in that context, when I was asked to work on sustainability, there were a few things that I was trying to figure out what they really meant. And for me, it really came down to 2 things. In the case of a consumer product, it was the packaging, and it was what it is inside. You know, the packaging is clearly made out of plastic, and you're going to see that a lot of the conversation today is going to go around plastic, which is a topic that has come very close to my heart and I've been working on for the past few years. But when you consider consumer goods product, there is also something else, and that is what's written on the right side of the slide, which is the ingredient list. So what are the ingredients which are put into that product? And that is really important. That is part of sustainability, meaning, are you putting the right things inside? Are you doing it in a way which is sustainable? Are you doing it in a way which is not causing impact to the planet? And, you know, Head and Shoulders, in all fairness, was of course trying its best in doing it, but not necessarily being at the gold standard of everything. And so in 2014, this happened. There was about, I think, 15 or 20 activists that broke into what they are, the P&G Towers. This is the headquarters in Cincinnati in the US. So these people brought in, they managed to climb up to the top of the tower, and they put down these huge signs about how Head and Shoulders was using palm oil in the wrong way, not in a, you know, certainly not in what they consider to be a sustained and certified way. And therefore, it was doing its job and not only wiping out dandruff, but actually doing the same with the rainforest and with tigers, orangutans, and a lot of other animals. I'm telling you this because, you know, it was a very tough moment, first of all, because, you know, if you're running sustainability for the brand, it was just being appointed at that time. And this happens, you know, it's big crisis. And it's a big crisis which happened because the brand was on a point, which I'll talk about at the end of the meeting, on how it was not proactive. You know, Head and Shoulders, like many other brands, had been sitting on what the brand had been made of for the past few years without thinking about how consumers were changing, without really focusing too much, or enough at least, on the impact that it was having. And then this happened. This was a big wake up call for P&G, but wake up call for Head and Shoulders, because after this, we definitely started to do things in a different way. And that's what I'm going to tell you more about today. Shifting the topic, I want to get into plastic, which is something very dear to Head and Shoulders. You know, making 1 billion bottles, that's 1 billion pieces of plastic, which are made just by Head and Shoulders everywhere. And, you know, plastic by itself, don't get me wrong, plastic by itself is not the problem. The problem with plastic is the way we've been using it. Because if we think about today, you know, in the very special context in which we are, and you think about medical supplies, of the very famous ventilators everybody's trying to get a hold of, a lot of that is made out of plastic. You know, so plastic in that context is just wonderful. It's the best material you can dream of. However, plastic, the way that is being used in the fast-moving consumer goods, it's not necessarily the right approach. And hopefully it's something which will change over time. So what you see here is this beautiful, lightweight, flexible, colored, shiny material, which a lot of the brands fell in love with, and they've developed a big market, which is in general the one of packaged goods, you know, CPG. The real problem with plastic is this: it's single use. Single use in 2018, sorry, was named Word of the Year. I'm Italian. In Italy, you say usa e getta. Usa e getta means you use it and you throw it away. That, I find, is an extremely telling definition for the way we use plastic and for the way we've been using plastic over the past few years. So the problem is, plastic actually can last for 450 years into the environment. We use it on average for about 3 minutes. We throw it away and we forget about the fact that it lasts for 450 years. We throw it in the bin and we just don't worry about it. In some cases, we say, okay, we recycle the plastic. But what does recycle really mean? Because does the plastic that you put in the recycling bin actually get recycled? That unfortunately is not true in most of the cases, because out of the 8.3 trillion tons of plastic that have been produced over the past years, only 9% actually got recycled. 9%. That's very, very tiny. Here is an example of single-use plastic, you know, and again, what I was trying to say is I'm not against plastic per se, but then when you see plastic being used in these ways, you're like, really? Do we really need this? No, we probably don't. And we as consumers, we have the power to actually make choices not to buy plastic when it's served in forms like this one. There is one very big stat on plastic that kind of blew me away, and that is what actually influenced me to do something different when I was on Head and Shoulders. So in 2015, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, sorry, actually in 2016, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation went to the World Economic Forum, and they said, you know, we made a study for which we are declaring a big emergency on plastic. There is plastic, which has a very big presence in our oceans. Right now is a ratio of about 1 to 3 in weight versus fish. If we keep on going the way we're going, we're going to get into a place where we're going to overcome the number of fish with plastic. So by 2050, there could be more plastic than fish in the ocean if we don't change the way we're doing things. So I remember very, very well the moment I heard about it. And I remember being like, wow, as a brand and as a world leader, we absolutely need to do something about it. We're not going to be able to change completely our products not to use plastic, but we still need to send a very strong signal that hopefully will mean something into this world, which is just using plastic not in the right way. And so together with a team of very passionate individuals within P&G, I developed this project. So 1 year after, we went back to the World Economic Forum and we said, you know, we were very impressed last year when we heard the study from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Today we're coming back and we're saying that P&G wants to play a role in bringing a solution. This role in bringing a solution is the one that we try to kind of signal with this initiative. This initiative, to be very frank and clear, is just a drop in the ocean. Because at first we produced about 150,000 bottles, then we shifted to 1 million, and then about 10 millions, and I don't know what the latest numbers are. But it wasn't really meant to do this for the number, but rather because we were sending a strong message. You know, in 2017, P&G goes back to the World Economic Forum in a context where Trump had just been elected and he was saying that he would wanted to withdraw the COP23 agreement. And we said, us, a private conservative company is coming here with an attempt to play its role in the problem of plastic. And so we declared this, and we also declared that all the hair care bottles were converting 25% recycled content into their bottles. It was not ocean collected recycled content, but it was just recycled content in general. I just want to pause very briefly to tell you a little bit more of you know, how complicated this project was to bring together. When you see this bottle, you're like, okay, well, you just take the plastic, you recycle it, and you put it into the bottle. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't that simple, because when you pick plastic from the beach, from the ocean, first of all, you need to pick it. So you need to have volunteers, or you need to pay people to help you do that collection. But then once you've gotten that plastic, you really want to be careful, because you don't know where that plastic has been. You don't know what it has been in contact with. You don't know what product it originally was. And therefore, if you want to recycle it, you need to clean it, you need to sort it, you need to process it in a way where you're not mixing different polymers as well. When you look at a product, at a plastic product, you normally will find a number. This number is on a scale from 1 to 7. The scale from 1 to 7 tells you what kind of polymer is included into that plastic. So if you think about plastic water bottles, for example, you're going to have the number 1. So that's the PET. Head and Shoulders, for example, had the number 2, which was HDPE, and so on and so forth. So if you mix numbers, you're creating a product which cannot be recycled again. Therefore, imagine how complex it was to pick up all the plastic and then to separate only the number 2, which is the only one that we could use for Head and Shoulders, to create a product that then it could be recycled again, because we did not want to create something which was then unrecyclable. So it was a bit of a breakthrough from a technical standpoint, but also from a mindset shift standpoint, because you know, it was really, really hard to break down barriers in P&G to convince people to do this. The cost of producing this plastic was something around 30 times the one of normal plastic. So, you know, convince a profit-driven company to do something like that. Well, it was a bit of a challenge, but in the end, it actually worked. And not only worked within P&G, but I think it really worked into the consumer goods world, because together with another initiative, which is this one from Adidas, I believe it really was a very strong statement, and it was something that has pushed a lot of other brands to do similar activities. So hopefully you've been witnessing and you've been observing how Head and Shoulders wasn't just the only one, and Adidas wasn't just the only one, but there's been a lot of other initiatives that have come one after the other, trying to do something about plastic waste. And you're seeing a much raising awareness about everything which is plastic waste in the consumer package world. And that is also thanks to consumers, but it's also thanks to the realization of where we really are. So this was really, really mind-blowing for me. This is plastic pollution to date. So if you look at the green block on the left, you're going to see where we are with the plastic that we produced until today. And then here with the different lines, what you're able to see is the kind of scenarios that are projecting if we keep on producing plastic in the way that we're doing, so the business as usual, which is the red line. So you're going to see and you're going to understand very quickly how we can get in a place where by 2050 there can be more plastic than fish in the ocean, and much more plastic than fish in the ocean, by the way, if we do business as usual. Then you look into the other ones and you say minimal reduction scenario, moderate reduction scenario, and you see how the production is still actually very, very significant. And then strong reduction scenario is something that would take it down, but it's very, very unlikely to happen, in all honesty. And the reason here is, you know, the world is developing, and there is a lot of big countries with a lot of population that are getting access to a higher income. They're getting access to some goods, and therefore they just want to buy these goods. And a lot of time the goods come in plastic. And so that is why there is a trend like this one. Driven from a lot of the developing economies, like India, for example, is playing a key role in this context. Either way, when I was at P&G, after launching that project, I just couldn't sleep almost thinking about plastic. Actually, some nights it didn't happen because I was just thinking, wow, this problem is really, really big. And a lot of people, they're not realizing. They're not realizing because they're not changing their mentality. And there was one product really that struck me the most out of all types of plastic, and it was water bottles. So Melissa, if we can put the next poll, I'm really curious in hearing how many bottles you guys believe that are produced every minute, well, consumed or produced, doesn't make a difference, every minute in the world. Just water bottles, by the way. All right, let's see what you guys think. It's gonna pop out very soon. All right, unfortunately, most of you are right. Very unfortunately, most of you are right. As a matter of fact, there is 1 million water bottles that are consumed every single minute in the world. 1 million water bottles consumed every single minute in the world. I find this mind-blowing. And I find this mind-blowing because I know that a lot of times those bottles are actually not needed. Think about it. In the US, for example, in the US only, about 50% of the water which is sold in bottles is actually coming from the tap. It gets filtered and then it gets bottled. And so you stop there and you ask yourself, do we really need that? Do we really need to consume plastic for, you know, consume water in plastic bottles because we need it for those few minutes and then throw it away and forgetting about the 450 years that bottle has ahead of it? Well, I really think we don't. And I think we don't because actually plastic water bottles, they're coming with a lot of negatives as well. They're coming with negatives in terms of the, first of all, environmental impact, as you can imagine, but also in terms of the kind of impact that it has on the materials that this plastic is made with. So for example, if you leave a bottle in your car exposed to sunlight, there's going to be a lot of chemicals that may leak into the water you're drinking. And that water you're drinking is something which is then going to come into your body. And there may be elements like BPA and other chemicals which you really do not want to have into your body. At the same time, you look at the water which is into water bottles, and a lot of times let's say the tests and checks that are done on that water are much, much less stringent versus the ones that is done on tap water or filtered water in general. And so you really stop there and you ask yourself, do I need that? And luckily, consumers are realizing that they don't. So there is a very big market that has been growing over the past few years. And this market is the one of durable water bottles. Durable water bottles are just, flasks, stainless steel or whatever other material water bottles like this that you just use and refill with the water that you can take at home. You can take at a filtering station, you can take in the office and in different places. And this market has been growing a lot. As a matter of fact, we've been observing how last year, the sale of plastic water bottles in the supermarkets in the UK went down by 10%. So I know some of you guys are students, but the ones that are working and are working in a category that is going down 10%, trust me, you don't want to be there. I mean, it's definitely the category where you're scared of being because it is a category that is going down significantly. Therefore, I would say that it's really important to consider these factors into into the dynamics of water bottles. So with that in mind, we've been doing a lot of work. I've been doing a lot of work about thinking what are potential solutions that I could bring to the market that could provide alternatives to plastic water bottles. And here I'm, shifting gears. So I left P&G armed with an idea that I believe could be something that worked from a profit standpoint. So a bit of a social business according to the definition that Eunice was giving, but at the same time driving an impact. And so my intuition was every time people are using a durable bottle, they're not using a plastic water bottle. So because they're not using a plastic water bottle, there is a positive impact that they're generating. And so my intuition was there must be a way of capturing that positive impact. So the way that positive impact was captured is thanks to the creation of a product that I'll talk to you about quickly today that is called Rebo. So Rebo is a bottle that is a smart bottle. It's a smart bottle where there is a sensor which is put into the cap. It's a sensor with a laser in it. It's a laser time of flight. It's not bad for your eyes. It just goes into the liquid. And what it's capable of doing is to send a signal and measure the amount of water which is contained into your bottle. The amount of water which is contained into your bottle is then processed and sent through Bluetooth to an app. And what happens into this app is that the phone is able to know how much water you're drinking and how much water you should be drinking according to your lifestyle as well, by the way. And then we use that very same information also to know how much plastic you're saving, because normally every time you're drinking a water bottle with this Rebo, there is a plastic water bottle that is not being created. And therefore, because we know how much plastic you're not using, we have partnered with a company, it's called the Gold Standard. It's the biggest certification reduction agency on emissions. And what we do is we certify the fact that people are reducing the impact of plastic. And because they're reducing it, we're able to issue a credit that then we sell on the market, and the proceedings of the sale are used to fund the collection of plastic waste. The plastic waste collection is funded then with the money that corporate sponsors are giving in order to buy these credits. So what you see here is an Indiegogo page. This Indiegogo page is something which we have launched in order to validate. It's what you probably have heard into entrepreneurship classes or the likes, is the product market fit. Is the validation with consumers of, are they really interested in a project like this? And we demonstrated actually that there was market for this. We sold about $200,000 worth of bottles in about a couple of months. So really realizing there was consumer demand. And now we're working very hard on the production of the bottle, being very, very mindful about everything on supply chain, choices on materials, and building this business model, which is a pretty unique one. In building this business model, there is another business that I want to talk to you about. It's called the Plastic Bank, and it's a business that we work with. So what the Plastic Bank does is a wonderful thing that makes sense from an economic standpoint, but also makes sense from an impact standpoint. So what they do is they go to areas where there is very, very low development of waste management systems. I think that the picture here is from Haiti. They have also presence in the Philippines, they have presence in Indonesia, and a few other markets. And so what they do is they go to people that are jobless and they offer to pay them money in order to collect plastic waste that is, just polluting the environment, sitting on the beach, in the ocean directly, or surrounding areas. And what they do is they pay these people with money which is above the minimum salary. What they do then with that money, they're able to afford basic needs for them and their family, which is something they're very concerned with. And what Plastic Bank does then, it sells the plastic which is recycled for a premium price because of the social impact that it's having. Therefore, is able to afford the wage of these people, a very decent wage, and at the same time is able to create a supply chain by creating plastic that is then sold and is used to create new products. Therefore, here you have a closed loop where the plastic is used, is recycled, and then is used into other products, and at the same time is having a social impact, which is what is really also important to have in these poor regions. And we're partnering, by the way, with the Plastic Bank. So they are the collection agent for Rebo. So for those plastic bottles that I was mentioning that are getting collected, they're being done with the Plastic Bank. So that's actually the end of the first block. Melissa, I don't know if there is questions in that we want to address. Otherwise, to more what's happening right now with COVID, I just want to talk about it very quickly, and then get into more, let's say, the learnings and findings that I've had so far.
Yeah, we can open up the floor to questions. Are there any questions at the moment? If you have anything, you can add it in the Q&A box at the bottom middle of the screen, or you can also raise your hand if you'd like, and I can unmute you so you can discuss with Pierandrea.
Otherwise, I'm happy to take them later, but just wanted to open it up if there is anything coming in. Okay,
we do have a question. So what are your main challenges right now?
Well, so thank you I think it's Vincenzo that asked the question. So there is a lot of challenges, I guess, that we're exploring right now, and a lot of them are COVID related. COVID is bringing disruption on a lot of different things, and I'm going to talk a bit about the impact of COVID on us and in general. So I'll tell you more on that. Besides that, I mean, as an entrepreneur, there is a lot of challenges that I'm facing in terms of getting this off the ground in the right way. It's developing a hardware product with a big software component, marketing it, and having a team that can help you to develop all that. It's something which is really consuming in terms of resources, both from money standpoint, but also from people in terms of people. Therefore, there's a lot of work that I'm doing right now in trying to square all that with the hardware development, with a partner that we have identified, with the software development, which is going to be a very important part of bringing the product to life. And I'm doing all that being, as you know, a CEMS student. Therefore, I don't have engineering background. I don't know too much about hardware. I don't know too much about software. So it is being a very significant learning period for me to get up to speed on all these items, because otherwise there is no way you're able to lead them and bring them forward, let's say. Okay. So good. Answer to the first bit of the question, second bit coming now with the COVID slide.
All right. We also have a question from Sophia. She'd like to ask live. So just give me 1 second. I will unmute her. So Sophia.
Hello.
Hi, thanks Sophia.
Thanks for the wonderful presentation. It's really provoking and I'm really thinking a lot during your talk. So my question is that could you please elaborate more on the product development? I'm really interested how you reach from this idea to the actual products, because I also studied sustainability during my STEM studies, and I also had ideas, but it's really hard to like format it and to reach a business or a product itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So thank you for the question, Sophia. I'm glad to hear that we share similar passions on sustainability. And so when I had the idea, of course, I didn't leave my job from one day to the other, because that would just not be responsible, let's say. But rather than that, what I did was I started developing bits of that idea to test them very quickly. So there is a methodology that a lot of the entrepreneurs are going to be familiar with, which is the lean startup. I'm not mentioning anything breakthrough, but lean methodology is really about developing mini parts, let's say, of your idea and testing them very quickly to understand whether they make sense or they don't make sense. So on the product development, for example, I'm going to give you an example, and that's called smoke testing. So smoke testing is a wonderful way of validating whether people would be actually interested in buying your product. So I had the idea. I started to develop it a bit with the qualitative feedback, which means focus groups, which means you can call a bunch of your friends, sit around a table, or get in a Zoom meeting, because sitting around a table may be complicated nowadays, but get around a Zoom table and brainstorm and get inputs on what is good about the idea, getting constructive feedback and so on and so forth. And so with that, what we did was shaping that into the form of a concept. This concept was brought to life into a website. And in this website, we bought media money to bring people to it, to understand whether they were interested in the product and they were interested in buying it. Cost of developing a website is nothing, because if you do it on certain platforms like Wix or Squarespaces or others, you can actually do it for free or for very few euros. And so what we did, we developed a landing page. We started to drive traffic there. And also there, you don't need to spend a lot of money. With 50 euros or the likes, you already have a significant number of people that you can potentially bring to your site. And then there you're able to see metrics. You're able to see whether people are clicking on the ad, first of all. So the click-through rate, whether they're coming to your page, if they're spending time on this page, if they're potentially clicking on buy now. So that is a very important thing. Are people really interested in buying? Well, you're able to verify it there. And I love smoke testing because it's a wonderful way of really, really demonstrating whether there is market for your product. If you ask friends, would you buy this? They will say yes. Of course they will say yes because they're your friends. Even if you ask people on the street if they would buy it, most likely they will say yes because they're telling you in their face. On the other hand, if you're able to evaluate the behavior that people have when they come into your page, I think that is more telling than anything else because you're really able to see whether people are going to buy, whether they're going to buy for that price, and whether they are going to, and how much it costs you actually to get them to buy. And so by developing the concept, building a website, and doing smoke testing, I think you can learn a lot about your ideas before you get into physical development, which is going to take you a lot of money and a lot of time. Hopefully I answered the question, Sophia. Tell me if you have more, or if there is any other question, Melissa.
Yeah, I think it was really good, thanks. But like, as I looked the product, it seems to me a little really like a programmed product, let's say. So it's not easy as a business person to build up. It seems to me that it's more of like a really electronic product. So how did you manage to build up that product? Like, you had an idea, and
oh yeah, absolutely. Okay,
how,
so
like, whom you worked with, like, you know, for me, I just want to understand, because I think it's a really good initiative to how to do it and to learn
no,
from
absolutely. So let's say with the first bit, what I answered was more on the idea generation, on the concept, and on the validation of this concept. I mean, of course, early validation. The real validation happened with the crowdfunding campaign, and even more validation will start when we're actually going to sell for real. Now, on developing the product, once we knew that the idea was a good one, that was really, really complicated. And I agree with you. It's something that I like scratch my head around a lot of times. So I went on websites, co-founder network websites, saying, hey guys, I'm looking for a technical person, because the founding team was 3 business people. So we had no technical knowledge. I'm looking for a technical person, and eventually did not find anybody. So what I started to do, I started to hang out at technical universities. By hang out, I mean, go to conferences, try to meet people. And so it was in that context that I met an engineer that has been very instrumental for the early development of this project. And so he was the one that helped me to bring the things up to speed from a technical standpoint. So really understanding what were the implications with the electronics. But then actually something even better happened, which is what we know how to do as business people. I started to network also with other companies. And so eventually I landed with a company called Aptar. Aptar is the biggest company in the world that produces caps. I used to work with them at Procter & Gamble. They were making the cap of Head & Shoulders. And so I approached them with the idea, and I said, are you guys interested in helping me with the development of the cap? And eventually they were really, really interested, because they wanted to understand more about connector products. And they had a department which was available to support me with the development of the product. Therefore, we went ahead in the conversation, and then they eventually became a strategic partner of mine by getting some equity of the company, and then giving me resources in exchange to develop all the technical part, which is the one I'm less fluent with, let's say. But I think what is important in the story is, because I did the first bit, and because I did the business validation right, they saw somebody that could actually understand how to make things work from a business standpoint, and therefore they were happy to come on board as a strategic partner and support with technical development. But in general, what I would say is, technical part is not something you can do on your own. So it's about finding the right partner. Be that a person, be that a company, hiring somebody, a co-founder, whatever it is. But you often need that bit as well. Hopefully I did answer the question now.
I think so. Great. All right. We do have another question, a live question from Martin. I'm just going to allow him to talk for a second.
Yep.
All right, Martin, the floor is yours.
Yep, thanks. Hey, Pierandrea, it's Martin. Yeah, first of all,
hey,
congrats again to what you've achieved over the past 2 years, I think, since we met back then in London, when you told us about your idea in brief. I mean, my question is also more about about the potential target market, you know, because on the one hand, I mean, I can imagine that everyone who's kind of drinking water from a bottle, from a plastic bottle, could be a potential fit for Rebo. But then on the other hand, is my idea when I talk to some friends about your idea and your product is, you know, how is it possible that, for example, a person in for example, Egypt, where the water is not drinkable from the tap, can use actually your Rebo bottle, right? Speaking of Austria, Geneva, and so on, perfect quality water. But what about other countries where you have a huge potential market, but then it's not possible to refill the bottle? Just a question.
Yeah, no, thank you, Martin. So it's a very fair question, and it's a question to which I will simply answer. This product, as it is today, is developed for developed markets. So markets that have access to quality tap water. Having an impact into the other markets will come later, perhaps with another product though, where there is some filtering capabilities, where there is some cleaning through UVC capabilities. There can be different ways. So right now we're just marketing this to more developed countries where there is access to quality tap water. However, what I want to add to this answer is also the fact that there is an inflection point, because there is a lot of water fountains that are being put out right now in developed and in developing countries. Water fountains that are being put out with filtering capabilities that are progressively spreading. So in London, for example, even if the tap water is good, there was 100 water fountains that were rolled out in the city center. Looking at Italy, by the way, where I'm from and where there is one of the biggest consumptions of PET bottles, there is what's called little water houses that are being rolled out in cities where you can refill your bottle. So I believe that, yes, the product as it is today is marketed for developed markets. However, there is an infrastructure which is being developed in a lot of the other countries where I believe that Rebo, like many other durable bottle solution, will be able to profit and get consumers to shift to a much more sustainable behavior where they're not using plastic.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot for answer. Looking forward to the next editions then as well.
Yes, looking forward as
Cheers,
well. You're
thanks.
welcome. So Melissa, perhaps
Yes.
just in the interest of time, what I suggest is I'm going to go quickly through the next couple of slides, just with the main learnings and COVID impact, and then we can finish with questions, just so I can make sure that I cover those.
Sounds good. All right, here we go.
Okay, so, all right, what's happening after COVID? So I think nobody knows. And I think there is a lot of speculations right now with people trying to understand what's going to happen. I don't know it. People on the line now will know it. What I can tell you is that there is different forces. So I want to take you through 4 different forces that I've been experiencing and I've been observing, which I think they are contrasting in a certain sense. And we'll see which one prevails. So the first one is increase awareness on how fast the planet can heal. You know, we've been talking so much about containing the level of global warming. Right now, where half of the world population is stopped and economic activities have literally stopped in a lot of countries, we've seen how wildlife took back on the cities. We've seen how pollution progressively disappeared. So I think this is a very important point that makes us really realize the planet can heal. The planet is sick, but can heal. It can heal very, very fast, even faster than we thought. And therefore, I think this is going to make people think on the actual impact that reductions can have in the future. Second point, push consumers to look for greater meaning. There is already a lot of surveys and stats, and there is the latest one is coming from McKinsey that I recommend you have a look. I can share the link separately, where they're asking consumers how their behavior is going to change, what they're going to do differently. And consumers are saying that they're going to look for products with a much greater meaning. They're going to look into having an impact with the products that they're buying. Therefore, I believe that products like Rebo, but in general, anything which is connected to sustainability, will take a much, much more important role as we move forward. On the other hand, contrasting forces, low oil prices can change the sustainability agenda. So I don't know if everybody knows it, but plastic in general, plastic production is a function of oil prices. The lower the oil price, the lower the cost of producing virgin plastic. Virgin plastic is mainly a function of oil. Therefore, in a context where oil prices are really low, people have an incentive to buy virgin plastic over buying recycled plastic because it's just much cheaper to make and therefore much cheaper in terms of the reflection on the cost of their product. I think this is going to be an important point, and I think this is an important point that we need to take into account. Nevertheless, that cost is generally not reflected on consumers. So this is more on the corporate side. And then fourth, growth on non-sustainable solution in the short term. So we're seeing a lot of people that are buying single-use solutions right now. Think about the mask, think about the hand sanitizers, think about a lot of those things, people stocking up on bottled water and a lot of other stuff. So on the short term, I think plastic will play a role, which is almost good because, you know, you need plastic to do properly the ventilator, for example, or different, let's say, medical appliances that can really have an impact in this crisis. However, what we're really hoping is that they don't have an impact and they don't enable the plastic lobbies to change the agenda and to postpone banning and other things. So this is just to say, COVID is complicated, and also to address the question from Vincenzo before, we don't really know where we're going to net out. We don't know whether companies are going to be more interested than before in buying our product or less interested. I hope it's going to be the first. But it could also go in the latter. Nevertheless, the forces that I've just listed here, I'm seeing a much, let's say, heavier balance on the first two rather than on the second two. So I'm actually really optimistic on the positive impact that COVID can have. There is actually a poll that I'm going to ask just to sense where the audience is. So Melissa, if we can just ask it quickly, to feel whether you guys are going to believe that we're going to go back to normal, or you believe we're going to be in a better or worse position. And I want to pause just for a moment on normal, because normal is not necessarily correct. So there is a lot of discussion here on, you know, let's just wait to get back to normality. Well, normality before wasn't the right way forward because we knew that that wasn't really working. So just very curious to understand how you feel and where you feel we're going to head. So let's just see what your thoughts are on COVID impact, increased focus. So very happy to hear. I agree, actually. I tend to agree. I tend to be optimistic in this space. And I think there's going to be an increased focus. So let's hope that we're all right. I mean, that the bigger half is right. And only time will know. But, you know, we can update each other later, hopefully, with positive messages. So now talking about learnings, there is just a few things, a few takeaways that I want to take you through. Hopefully you're going to see them reflected into the different things that we've discussed. So the first one is align strategy and sustainability. Sustainability doesn't have to be an afterthought. Sustainability doesn't have to come as its own thing, but rather it needs to be something which is aligned with the strategy. The more this is aligned with the strategy, the much simpler it's going to be to execute projects which are sustainability related. In the moment there is a disconnect, well, your management, your company, whatever that is going to go back to the initial strategy and sustainability is going to be left aside. And you do not want that to happen. And sorry, just to make a point here, strategy here, in the case of Head & Shoulders, for example, there was a strategy on improving packaging. Therefore, having initiatives on plastic and on the packaging was exactly an example of what I'm trying to say. Reactive to proactive. So you've hopefully seen that in the Head & Shoulders case as well. In the case of the palm oil, we were reactive. We were reactive because we're just not ready. We're not doing things in the right way. We were not ready to play an important role in sustainability. However, moving forward with plastic, we were proactive. We were actually the first consumer goods brand that came with a solution to plastic waste, at least in that manner. Of course, there were other things, but it was probably the most significant and visible one. Therefore, you definitely want to shift the agenda. You want to get everything right, and you want to make sure that you can shift into the proactive part, which is building into the third point, which is about compliance first, and then competitive advantage. You want to make sure that you're green for real before you start doing projects in sustainability. Because when we launched the project on Head & Shoulders, for example, there was so much scrutiny that happened on the brand, and you wanted to make sure that you had your things in place. Also, you know, thinking about Rebo, when I launched Rebo, I was extra careful about everything on supply chain, on life cycle assessment, and everything else, that it was positive and under control, because I didn't want people to come back and saying, you know, you're trying to solve a problem, but then you're creating more waste for doing that. And I still got a lot of people coming back with that. But had I not had things under control, the thing I think would have gone in a very wrong direction. So I think it's really important to be compliant first. Then eco-consumer is no longer a niche. I think this is really important. So I was mentioning a McKinsey research before. 66% of people declare just now that they're going to look into buying products which are more sustainable. So 66% more sustainable versus today. And already today, or yesterday at least, we were in a place where a lot of people were doing a lot of effort in cutting down on their plastic waste consumption and on their footprint. So this is just to say that if you develop stuff which is focused on people that care about the environment, well, that's not a niche anymore. That's actually a very big chunk of people. And it's pretty transversal. Of course, there are commonalities, but it's pretty transversal to different targets. And the last, which is probably my favorite point, that I really, really hope you can take away. You are in a very privileged place to make a difference. And I really mean it. So I was looking at the attendance. So there is a combination of students, people working in big companies, people working in small companies. And this message is probably mainly for the ones working in big companies, but then it goes to anybody. You know, in general, we're business leaders. People coming out of CEMS, they are, or they hopefully will be business leaders at some point. If today, in the brand you're running or in the position that you have, you are able to influence choices, you're able to influence decisions to do something that has a positive impact on the planet, you can really, really make a difference. You can have an impact which is much, much, much bigger than the one you can have as an individual. I'll give you a very quick example. I made a calculation on Head and Shoulders because I really wanted people in the team to feel that. And so the calculation was, if you were able to make a business decision that would cut the footprint of Head and Shoulders by 0.1%, so that literally is a business decision on product development, you were able to have as much impact as you could have if you cut by half your emission on an individual level over a time of 700 years. So hopefully this makes you realize not that you don't need to do your stuff on the personal level, but if you make business decisions that go in the right way, you can really have an impact and the planet will be glad for that. So here there is, you know, a street that you have ahead of you and you can go into different directions. And I'm going to leave you with the last poll here, asking whether, hopefully, you feel that you will try to make a difference moving forward. And if everybody says no, then I'll be very sad and this presentation will not have worked, but hopefully it will be people saying yes, and hopefully you will actually do it besides what you're answering to the poll. I think you owe it to the planet, you owe it to your family, you owe it to the future. So, you know, hope you can really think about it this way. So, all right, well, thank you for this. And we have a few more minutes. So if you like, we can go back to questions and we can see if there was any other question you guys wanted to ask. Either it was already written or there was somebody on the line. So Melissa, you let me know.
Yes, we do. We have quite a few questions, actually. We have one from Nadia that says, are FMCGs really willing to move to a non-single-use model? Isn't that against their interests profit-wise? And are they proactively taking steps towards sustainability rather than just adjusting to the demand, i.e. customers wanting to buy more responsibly?
All right, that's a pretty good question and pretty long. Do I have it written somewhere so I can make sure that I address all the different points?
Yes,
oh, yeah, I see it here.
In the Q&A
right.
box, yeah.
Nadia, thank you very much for the question. So let me try to unpack it. Are FMCGs really willing to move to a non-single-use model? I believe they are. And I believe they are because consumers are. Because you're starting to see supermarkets that do not support any more single-use packaging. You're starting to see solutions which do not support any more single-use packaging. So I think it's going to be a combination of forces. A force is the one of consumers that are shifting, and the other force will be the one of FMCGs that will not want to lose the party. And so I'm going to mention an example from a very dear friend of mine. It's a project called Loop. Loop is a project that what it does, it has partnered with FMCG companies to actually develop products like Häagen-Dazs ice cream, like Pantene shampoo, Head & Shoulders shampoo, Gillette razors, and a lot of different things, which are made in a durable packaging. So it's not single use anymore. It's basing everything on a very strong e-commerce model or drop model, where you're able to buy durable products. So it's called Loop, L-O-O-P. I recommend you check that out. Now, trying to tackle the other points in your question, profit-wise, I think there is interest in doing that. And I'm going to give you another example. Nestlé has recently rolled out plans. You can find this on Bloomberg. If you type Bloomberg Refill Plus, of creating a dispensing water machine. Water dispensing machine for Nestlé. Nestlé is the world leader in bottled water. Nestle makes about between 8 and 9 billion Swiss francs in bottled water every year. They're creating a water dispensing machine. This water dispensing machine does not dispense plastic water bottles. It just dispenses water. Therefore, you need to go with a bottle like Rebo or any other in order to be able to refill from that machine. So I think this is a pretty strong signal that a company like Nestle is sending of saying, look, we're realizing that our business is not going to last forever. Therefore, we want to learn with the different business models, and we believe that we can make them work and we can make them profitable. And then to the last point, you're going to see companies reacting in different ways. I believe you have companies like Unilever that are very vocal and very upfront about everything they're doing on sustainability. Other companies that are a bit more behind, I think eventually we'll get there. We'll get there, but mainly because consumers want it. Because consumer is boss. You know, this is a sentence that was guiding all conversations in P&G. Consumer is boss. You as a consumer can decide much more than you think you can. Therefore, the choices that you make on what you buy will influence the way companies are going to behave. And yeah, hopefully this answers the question.
Linked to the consumer, actually, Kaya has a question about what is your suggestion to help us to take more informed consumer decisions? Do you know any apps that support decision making and important certifications to follow? B Corp, e.g., when I need a T-shirt, how should I take the right or make the right decision? Or i.e., H&M has a line of clothes that are sustainable, but how do I trust this marketing? People say buy better quality, their supply chains are more sustainable, but some luxury brands are burning clothes to keep a high price. It's not easy to choose the right brands.
Yeah, this is a very complicated question to answer in the sense that I do not have the answer, but I agree with very much of the different points that have been mentioned. Because if you look at, for example, now, just yesterday there was an article in the press on Mr. Armani that was talking about how the fashion industry is wrong, precisely for the point you've been saying, because those brands that say that they're not fast fashion, they're still dictated by the paces and rhythms of fashion, and therefore they will find themselves burning clothes instead of actually selling them or giving them away just because they need to protect the brand. So it's definitely not an easy one. I think if you look for items that are going to last in time, in general, is a good rule, but then you may fall into a trap like this one. Certifications, also that one is hard to navigate. I think you mentioned one, which is a really good one, B Corp. So in order to be certified B Corp, you need to have article of association in your company that guide the way you're operating to have a positive impact on the environment. So I have those articles in our company, and hopefully we'll be at B Corp certified sometime soon. So I think that is a really good kind of endorsement to stand by. In general, in terms of apps, well, there is a lot of apps that help you to understand what is the composition inside the products. So when you look at whatever product you buy into a supermarket, you're going to see what's written behind what's called the INCI list, so the list of ingredients. Normally, the longer it is, the worse it is, because there has been a lot of stuff that has been put into that. The shorter it is, the more pure the product is. However, you don't need to forget that in order to have a product that is stable, there is some chemicals that need to be put in there. There is an app like Yuka and some that help you to scan the product and understand whether the product contains good ingredients, is done in a good way. So it's, I don't have a guide. I think it's about doing research a lot of the time, reading the stuff, trying to find stuff out. And the problem is when you do a lot of research, you keep on finding out new stuff, and you kind of shift progressively your thinking on what is the right thing. And so I guess that's why you're hearing me say that I don't have the perfect answer on how to do it. But I think it's all starting again with awareness and being informed about the purchases you're making. But thank you very much for the good question.
Hey, we have one more live question I think we can take from Dragana. I'm just going to allow her to talk. 1 second.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
You're great.
Oh, great. Hi. Thank you so much for the session. It was really inspiring to hear about your journey so far. I'm actually in the process of starting up a sustainable business myself. So I have quite a lot of questions, but I'll try to narrow it down. I just wanted to know how you guys work to kind of create the communication behind a somewhat complex product and the decision around price and going into crowdfunding.
Well, I think that a lot of that was coming from my previous experience at Procter & Gamble. So I did a lot of product development, and normally when you do product development, you spend a lot of time kind of distilling the product in the simplest way, which will make most sense with the consumers. Before I was talking about smoke testing, one of the wonderful things of smoke testing is that you can test different messages with people. Therefore, if you send them a certain message, you're going to see how many are clicking. If you send them another one, you're going to see how many are clicking. Therefore, that really helps you to understand what is resonating the most with people. So that hopefully will help you in understanding what makes sense to people and how you need to communicate it to them. Then coming into the material production and video production, well, here you wanna find the right people that are going to do it with you. So in my case, it was people that I worked with before in a creative agency. They become friends. We really wanted to do something together, and therefore they came on board and helped me to develop the communication, the video, the branding, and all that. I think what is really, really important, I don't know, Dragana, if you're a student, you have work experience, but this is more P&G wisdom. It's really, really important about your brief. It's really important about being very clear on what you want, being very clear on who you want to talk to, and being very clear on what kind of media you're going to use in order to communicate that message. Because if you're clear on those, the answer to those questions, they're going to help to inform a lot of the decisions you're going to make in terms of communication. About crowdfunding, well, crowdfunding for me was a pretty interesting thing that had been fascinating me for a while. And so I thought that given that I was developing a product that could be sold, it was a very good way of understanding and failing quickly, potentially. So understanding quickly, getting feedback, and getting market traction to see whether people were actually interested in buying the product. The crowdfunding process has been very, very complex. And you know, we could do a whole one-day session on how crowdfunding works. And by the way, happy to do that as a follow-up if anybody needs something. But the beauty of crowdfunding is that you were able to, I was able at least to demonstrate that there was market interest. I got a lot of feedback, a lot of very tough feedback as well, which I've been building into what is the next version of the product, or at least the next version of communicating the product. I got a demonstration of traction and revenue stream that can enable to finance the production of the product. And when you go to investors, all these things are really, really important to demonstrate that you actually have a valid idea rather than an idea on a piece of paper that doesn't have consumer interest and consumer validation. So hopefully I didn't miss any bit of your question, Rogana. Tell me if I did, and happy to continue with the answer.
I think we're all good. We are a bit over time. It's been great. But what we'll do is we'll gather the questions that are remaining, and I will send those over to you, Pierandrea, for feedback, and we could send some follow-up because there are quite a few questions that are left.
Yeah. If anybody wants to talk to me, I mean, I wanted to put the email, but just find me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to stay connected and answer further any question. It's an intense period, so forgive me if I'm not going to answer right away, but I'll get there. I promise.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you once again for your time and input today, Pierandrea. And
a pleasure.
It was truly enlightening, and I'm sure our participants learned something new today. I hope that you rethink how you consume. And if you still have questions unanswered, you can also send them over to the alumni@cems.org, and I'll gather those and send them off to Pierandrea with the follow-up email with the recording. And in order to improve our webinars, make sure that you fill out our survey, which will be sent out in the follow-up email. Thanks again, and we hope to see you virtually soon. And just remember, if you could follow to the last slide really quickly.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No problem.
By the way, sorry, this was my last slide.
This is a great film, yeah.
Yeah, just in case if you haven't watched it and you're curious in learning more about plastic, sorry, I forgot about this slide.
No problem.
I really recommend you watch this. Hopefully you're gonna have some time at home these days, so you can find this on Netflix. It's a great documentary, and it's really, really mind-opening. So if you found content on plastic today interesting, then do watch this, because it's gonna tell you much more.
Great, awesome. Yeah, and I mean, well, we'll have some follow-up on the platform under the event, but also you'll find the webinar resources there under the webinar section. But make sure you join our platform today so you can follow up with follow other webinars or coffee chats. We do have one coming up on Friday, also on Saturday. The one on Friday is about the crisis and in terms of luxury products and how to handle digitalization, whereas Saturday is the continuation with Vincenzo Belpiede with entrepreneurship. So thanks again, Pierandrea.
You're welcome. Thanks everybody for joining, and to you, Melissa, for organizing.
Yeah, sure. Have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch. All right. Thank you.
Everybody.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.